The system used to reward you for being quiet, competent, and compliant. Now, that same silence is being recalculated as irrelevance, and the world is starting to punish you for staying invisible. And invisibility increasingly means you cannot make any money. So the world is shifting. We are in a transition period. I'm sure that you have noticed that the old ways of making money, the old ways of making a living are starting to die. They're not as reliant anymore. You can feel the pressure, you can feel the instability that there less clear paths forward, and that it's becoming harder just to make a living with the old ways of doing things. And you are correct in feeling that way. The old ways of doing things are just not working as well as they used to. And coming 2026, 2027, and moving into the 2030s, you're going just to start feeling that pressure a lot more. So by now, I'm sure that you heard the term the one person business model. And before, people used to know this as a lot of different terms: digital nomad, online entrepreneur, creator, influencer. Those labels blurred everything together. It made it seem like this is just something like temporary or ego driven. But what's emerging right now is something a lot more precise. It's something about building a life that revolves around you, around who you are, what you know, how you live, and make a living at the same time. And this is beautiful because it's easier to do this now than any time before in human history. This shift was coming anyways, but it's coming a lot faster than I expected. So AI is compressing labor, like tasks that used to take whole teams, 3, 5, maybe 10 people, now can just be done by one person with the right tools. Output and execution is becoming cheaper and cheaper and more accessible for the individual. So yes, people are now able just to build life around themselves easier than any time before in human history, but at the same time it's making things harder for the shy, for the ones who don't want to be on camera, for the ones that don't want to be creating content, for the ones who don't want to be visible, for the ones who just want to be doing work in the background, behind the scenes. Hiding behind job titles, brands, logos, or faces roles is slowly dying. The system doesn't reward invisibility anymore. This is uncomfortable for a lot of people, because before you used to be able just to run a business or just make a living without having just to put out there in the masses for everyone to see what you're doing, everyone to see your face. You were able just to make a living and even build wealth without having to make a lot of noise and be public. But that deal is dissolving. It's just not the case anymore. It is becoming increasingly hard for you just to make money without having to show your face, without making content. Don't get me wrong, there's still ways to do it, and I teach this as well, but more and more you have to show your face, you have to put yourself out there, you have to create content if you want to make money, because invisibility means more and more irrelevance as time goes on. You have to be detectable whether people like it or not. We're moving into a world where content becomes necessity for relevance, proof that you can think, explain, solve, or see something clearly. Silence is not longer neutral or optimal. We're all going to have to adapt at some point, and being on camera is something that I strongly recommend. Don't stress yourself out. There's still ways that you can just not be on camera and still make money and still make it happen for you. But it's becoming more and more of a requirement as time goes on. Writing works, audio works, systems work. You can do faceless content analysis and documentation. There's ways around this. The real requirement is that value must exist outside of your head in a form other people can interact with. And this is the main resistance I see when it comes to just people trying to adopt a one person business model. They don't not want to show their face. I didn't want to have to show my face. I'm doing this right now kind of like a little bit against my will. I realized that the best way is just to like grow a brand, to grow a personal brand, to grow a one person business. So whatever it is that you want to call it, it's just to having to put yourself out there. And people say all the time that not everyone is just meant to be an entrepreneur, or not everyone is just meant to be on camera. And that is partially true, but it is a little bit outdated. The system will not always have room for people who stay invisible and compliant. The old deal was compliance plus obedience will equal stability. But in a world with AI is going to replace 50 to 60% of jobs in a matter of 7 to 10 years, adaptation for you and being willing just to do something that is outside of your comfort zone is not longer going to be optional for you. The good news is that if you're listening to me right now, you can adapt. You're still kind of like early for this, but there's two ways to adapt. You can do the easy way, or you can do the hard way. And when I say the hard way, this is what I mean. Because most people are not going to adapt just because they see the vision, just because they understand what's coming, and they want to just take active steps to adapt to the current environment. No, they will adapt because things stop working, because jobs are not longer available, and because whatever it is that they've been doing is just putting them in a very bad position, and they have to do something differently. That's what they will adapt. That's what I mean that they will adapt the hard way. That's how adaptation usually happens, by force, by environmental pressure, not because you saw it coming. Now, I want to give you the other side of this conversation. Yes, the future looks pretty dark for the people who want to cling to the old ways, for people who don't have this entrepreneurial spirit, for the ones who just want to work whatever job is out there, for the ones who, for the floaters, I call it. The people who just float in the world, that they don't care about making something bigger for themselves, that they just want to work, live life, let days pass, and that's it. It will look dark for them because the system is being designed or is adapted in a way to spit those people out. But it does look bright for the ones who are willing to adapt early. AI didn't eliminate all opportunity. It eliminated the assumption that opportunity will always exist in the form of a job. What's being destroyed isn't work itself, but what it is destroying is the, how can I call this? It's the safety net of like default employment. What is collapsing is I will always find another job model. It's like there's always be something out there for me to do. AI is eliminating commodity labor. It's not eliminating value. The person who can decide what to build, how to position it, and why it matters holds leverage. If no one can see what you do, if no one knows you exist, if no one knows how you think, how you solve problems, who you are as a whole, and if no one cannot trust you, cannot just have you on the radar, they cannot interact with you, they cannot buy your services, they cannot buy your products. We are not in the old world anymore where you can just be competent in silence. You have to make sure that you become visible for the masses just to be able to interact with you and transact with you. Unfortunately, we're moving into an economy that is going to be full of starving artists. People who are great at what they do, people who can solve problems very well, people who are very knowledgeable, people who knows their stuff very well, that they're very skilled, but because they're invisible, because they don't do content, because they are not putting themselves out there, they're not going to be able to make a living. So competence that remains silent is being treated as it does not exist. The system has no way just to like show it, to see it, for people just to become aware of it. If your thinking never lifts your head, it might as well not exist. If your understanding isn't expressed, it can't compound. If your contribution is invisible, it cannot be chosen. One way or another, you're going just to have to put yourself out there in a way that AI cannot replace you. Because AI cannot replace everything. It can replace a lot of things, but it cannot replace you. It cannot replace your judgment. It cannot replace what you as a human being can cause into someone else. So tools, a one-person business model runs on clarity, on outputs, on judgment, and on the ability that you as a person have to create transformation for somebody else. You operate based on a simple question. Does what I'm offering solve something real for someone? That forces alignment. Your thinking, your skills, your output, and your income connect directly. So I know putting yourself out there, get a camera, record, and start talking to it is very uncomfortable at first. But trust me, the more you do it, you start getting comfortable with it. When you build something around how you think, what you know, and how you operate, feedback becomes immediate. If it works, you feel it. If it doesn't work, you cannot blame somebody else. The more output you do, the more you learn by doing. So this clarity that you get by moving, by putting inputs, and by just actually taking action on things, it accelerates learning in a way that no job ever does, or that no research ever does. So this is why people who build their own systems and that start their own businesses develop faster and end up making more money than the people who just want to inside of the institutions pretending that they're always going to keep operating the same. And these days more than ever, and especially moving into the future, you're going just to need an infrastructure that is outside of the status quo. A place where you can just get paid for your outcomes, for what you're doing, for what you're offering, for the problems you're solving, or for the transformation that you're able to make happen for other people. You have to make sure that your survival doesn't depend on an economy that is spiraling out of control. And I'm going to tell you something that this is probably going to relieve you a little bit. You don't need to be an absolute expert. That belief keeps people frozen, keeps people from taking action. That is just not actually the case. You just need to be one step ahead of the person that you're helping. If you have a skill and can solve a problem, that's value you can offer. And the beauty of building this on your own is that you can get paid while you learn, instead of consuming endlessly and doom scrolling while waiting to be ready. Instead of doing that, you build something that is imperfect, you take imperfect action, and you let reality, right, shape your direction. And here's the thing, a lot of people are going just to be offering similar products or services to the one that you are offering. But something that you need to keep in mind is that even though there's multiple people offering the same thing, a lot of people are going just to connect with you because they like you, they like your personality, they like who you are, they like how you explain things, and they can just resonate more with you than somebody else. Just like there's a lot of different restaurants, just like there's a lot of different services for the same thing, it applies the same with the one person business model. And this is something that it cannot be saturated because there's not an infinite amount of you out there. You are a unique person. The way you see the world, the way you just experience life, the way you solve problems, the way you explain things, your knowledge and skills, your history, that is not something that it can be replicated. Indeed, that is not something that can be saturated. What does get saturated is poor skill and generic execution. So when you are the niche, when you are the brand and the offer, comparison becomes totally irrelevant. AI doesn't change that at all. What AI replaces is task, not judgment. It generates option, not direction. It accelerates execution, but it cannot decide what matters. That's why ownership matters more than ever. Ownership of execution, ownership of systems, ownership of outputs. Employment used to be a proxy for that. It's not anymore. You have to start building. Stop doom scrolling, for Christ's sake. Come on. You know, it's amazing how much people or how much time people waste by doom scrolling, by just wasting hours every single day, and without realizing you're wasting 20 hours a week doom scrolling in your couch. People will be pushed into this model whether they like it or not. You can get started with this if you have a job. Start small at first, like a side hustle, like a side project. If you can only put just 5 hours a week, put 5 hours a week. If you just have to put the whole week in there, just put the whole week in there. But you have to start building, because life and the world is not moving into a direction where you can just assume or expect that institutions will work in a way that you can just take care of yourself. It will not be the case. If you do a few things over time, you'll see it replace and surpass your current income. So what about the people who are not entrepreneurs, the doom scrollers, the floaters, the people who just depend on the system, the people who don't care about any of these things? And if you're one of those people, you're probably not going to be watching this video right now. But you probably know people who are like that. You probably know people who just, they don't care about, how can I say this? They don't care about improving their life, and they're just basically reacting to life. What's going to happen with those people? Well, this is going to sound harsh, but there's not much of a future for those people. There's really not. For most of human history, there was room to float. There was room for those type of people who were just the reactors. Unfortunately, especially right now, it's going to be harder than in the future, because right now we are still expected to pay rent, we're still expected to pay bills, we're still expected to conform to the old rule of things, while the new world isn't fully formed yet, where there's not just a way or just a program that will take care of people. We're not seeing, we don't have, yes, at least as of now, universal basic income, or just a way for people to do nothing. People are still expected to perform, to pay bills, but at the same time, we are in a world that is moving into the direction of automation, and is moving into the direction of the individual, that it can provide value. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the world is shifting towards self-direction by default, because if you do not choose a direction, one will be imposed upon you, and usually it's a bad one. It's a one that you don't want, because not everyone is going to adopt. Every technological shift has left people behind before. History is brutal that way. The old system is still fully enforced: rent, bills, subscriptions, inflation, productivity expectations, but the new system that absorbs displaced people hasn't been fully built yet. So expect things to feel worse now than they will later. People still have to pay rents, bills, internet, like phone bills, car payments. And at the same time, the job market is becoming more automated and selective. For people who are not wired for entrepreneurship, visibility, and self-direction, this is going to feel tough. The world that is coming will reward those who can learn how to externalize value and adapt early as well. And it will be very harsh of those who will want to cling to the old ways, want to expect things to remain the same, and want to wait for structures to do the thinking for them. And it's very easy just to predict how things are going to be in 2026, 2027, 2027, 2028. Expect more layoffs, expect more people who can barely make ends meet. Expect something big happening with housing, because as millions of people get displaced, I see something very interesting. I see millions of people are just not going to be able to pay rent. Police departments across the country are just not going to be able to keep up with evictions. We're probably just going to see a whole revolution on the whole concept of home ownership. And that is just one of the things that I expect to see over the next decade. So you definitely want to make sure that you adopt the best way you can in this new economy that is coming. And this is just exactly what I teach in my programs. If you go to the link in the description, you will see a PDF where I just expose my whole workflow, how I work, all the tools that I have, and also a second PDF that is going to help you adapt to the world that is coming.